Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for your patience while we figure out some technical issues. Is conference going good so far? Yep. People having fun? After lunch either means people are going to be like really up there and excited, or like really tired.
Really sleepy.
Yeah, so we should have brought some candy and thrown it or something. That's okay though, we'll be good. My name's, actually we can skip too. First we'll do a little introduction to Bonsai. If you have any questions, if you want to know us, we'll flash this slide up at the end, but follow us on social. We share lots of fun stuff. We did a big campaign for Teacher Appreciation Week where we gave away a bunch of gift cards and stuff like that.
And a Kindle.
Yeah, we love teachers and we want to talk to you guys on our social media, so follow us there. Do we not have an intro to us slide? Aha, there it is. Making financial literacy relevant to Gen Z is what we're talking about. My name is Mallory. I'm the curriculum lead at Bonsai.
I'm Nicole, so I'm the director of education. Both of us work to make the courses that we're going to be showing at some parts in our presentation today, and then we are hoping to talk with a lot more teachers and find out what you guys need, what we're missing, gaps that you feel like are in curriculum. We know you all are so inundated with so much like free financial literacy resources, and we hope that we can like meet some of your needs and not just be another voice that's like drowning. So anyway, yeah.
Cool. So to kick this off, we were going to start off comparing a couple of different videos. Let's start off with this one. This is from our favorite that everybody knows when it comes to the financial literacy space, Dave Ramsey. He's not our favorite. I feel like I didn't say that as sarcastically as I should have. But yeah,
my question for you is kind of following in your footsteps. How do you become a billionaire?
A billionaire?
Yes, sir. I've heard you say that's one of your goals, and I know you said like mutual funds won't get you there, and it's kind of capped at like 5 million or something like that. So
no, it's not. It's not capped at. It's not capped at that. But what I said was that we've just done this book, Baby Steps Millionaires, and the difference in a million and a billion is 1,000 million. So, you know, you can become a millionaire. Everybody can. Without a doubt, using your 401k and funding it.
Okay, so that's just a little intro. Dave Ramsey is kind of maybe an older way of talking about financial literacy. It's probably a lot of the ways that a lot of us were taught, kind of the mindset. And now I want to show a way that a lot of your students are probably thinking. This is a TikTok. About the same kind of idea, but obviously takes it in a very different direction.
Here's a good visual of how much $1 billion is.
So let's say 1 grain of rice is equivalent to 100K, and 10 grains of rice would be then a million. Well, how much is a billion? So my Saturday night consisted of counting 10,000 grains of rice, one by one. That is $1 billion, where each grain of rice is worth 100K. I just bought you like a Lamborghini right here, and I didn't even notice it was gone.
Okay, so the first question that I want to ask, what are the differences that you see in the approach to financial literacy in these topics, and why do you think either of these would relate more to one audience or the other? And let's just have everybody like get into little groups, just with people around you, people at your table, and just kind of discuss it for a minute.
Or no.
Okay. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off a little quicker. I apologize. We'll have to shift there. But what did you guys notice? What did you guys talk about in your groups? Does anybody want to be the brave soul that talks about what they talked about? I used to be a teacher. I'm not afraid to stare at a blank room.
The age difference of the presenters.
Yes, definitely. The person talking about it in the Dave Ramsey video is obviously quite a bit older. The other person that he's with is older. Even the person on the phone sounds a little bit older. The person in the TikTok is much younger. What else?
TikTok.
TikTok.
TikTok. We're going to talk a lot about TikTok. Anything else? Did anyone have any thoughts about sort of the attitude of the audience in these videos? One thing that I find very interesting is in the Dave Ramsey video, it's talking a lot about how do I become a millionaire? How do I get to this money? Whereas in the other video, it's almost talking about like, isn't it insane that someone can have that much money? Isn't that crazy? And like, I saw another version that the same guy did where he did, I think it was Jeff Bezos's money in rice, and it was literally like
it's like a cookie sheet and
yeah. It was crazy. And so it's kind of this idea of like a shift in approach. And I couldn't pull that up on TikTok because TikTok's blocked. But if you see in the comments of that TikTok, it's all people talking about like, this is crazy. Nobody should have that much wealth. Like, that's totally wrong. Like, that's insane to think that someone could have this much when that 2 grains of rice would be like my life and that would change everything for me. And I think that that kind of represents a really interesting dichotomy about the way that, you know, maybe we traditionally used to think about how we're teaching financial literacy versus like, how do I get as much money as I can? How do I do this? And kind of a different way that Gen Z may be approaching it. And so we're going to get into some of those ways that you can think about teaching some of these different ideas.
Our faces again. Okay, so kind of what we're going to go over today is we're going to talk a little bit about why financial literacy matters. I know that we are preaching to the choir big time on that, but we're just going to briefly cover it. We're also going to talk about making financial literacy relevant and engaging, focusing on Gen Z's financial concerns, connecting to their values, and empowering them with practical skills. We're both millennials, so we're like, we have that like silly fight with Gen Z where I'm like, I'm wearing my ankle socks and I'm gonna do a side part.
I almost wore long socks today so that I could look.
But we've done a lot of research and we've read a lot of studies about Gen Z and how they're interacting with different content, how they're learning things, and then we're just gonna really dive into it. So let's go. This is sorry. So are U.S. adults equipped to meet common financial challenges? So in the past 6 years, there was a study done by the TIAA Institute and Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center. And what they did was they were trying to answer this question. Are U.S. adults equipped to meet common financial challenges? So what they've done, and I'm sure we all are aware of the PFIN index that's used to measure financial literacy competence. They went through and they interviewed and surveyed a bunch of different people to see, like, where are we standing? As U.S. citizens, are we doing okay? And the 8 areas that they measured was earning, managing debt, consuming, insuring, saving, comprehending risk, investing, and information sources. And interestingly, Gen Z respondents only answered 42% of the 28 survey questions correctly. This is especially interesting because Gen Z is the generation with the most financial literacy. It is this generation where FinLit mandates are starting to impact them and they're actually having to learn financial literacy in schools. It's the generation that is engaging a lot with the internet and in different ways with social media. There's a lot of finfluencers all over social media, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, everything. So theoretically, this generation should be doing really well. Yeah.
If you had that 42%, you split out into the states, how would you think that would work?
I don't think that the study did that.
I'm guessing Utah would be higher because, I mean, we all know Utah's kind of the leader in financial literacy, and other states are, I mean, sorry, I was looking for Karsten to see if he was in here.
Trailing behind a little.
Sorry. he's on the Utah board and he's done a lot of research in this area to see kind of like where states are measuring up, and he's finding a pattern that most states are, after years, looking a lot like Utah's implementation. And we're seeing the effects in Utah, and he's actually conducting a huge study right now, so hopefully those insights will be available.
Yeah.
So, but I'm guessing they would be quite a bit higher. I graduated in 2010 in Provo, Timpview, and I took a financial literacy class when I graduated. Mallory also did. Mm-hmm. So there's 2. We got it. But why is this important? So we know that financial literacy matters, right? And the PFIN index, as they've done this study, they followed up to see kind of like what happens to folks that have a lower understanding or lower financial literacy. So people with low financial literacy are 6 times more likely to have trouble making ends meet. They are 3 times less likely to cope with a $2,000 financial shock. They are 3 times more likely to be debt constrained, and 4 times more likely to spend 10 or more hours a week thinking about personal finances. So it's not just that the literacy is helpful, it actually is making a really big impact. If we do not have literate students, they will be impacted in their adult lives. We're seeing it. We have the research that supports that.
Can I ask you a question about that last slide?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the top left one says 6 times more likely. 6 times more likely than what?
Then a person with high financial literacy.
And what's defined as high financial literacy?
I'm not sure how they defined it in the study. That's just how they talked about it.
I think there's 28 survey questions, and then the way they answered or defined it was if you had 7 or less correct in the 28 survey questions, you had low financial literacy. And I think if it was 20 something or more, you were considered high or financially illiterate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the PFIN index, there's a lot of resources online for that as well. Anything? Okay. And then anyway, so like I said before, Gen Z is the generation most likely to have been offered or participated in a financial education class or program.
And yet they're still ranking so low on these things. So clearly the things that we're doing, like some of these old methods that we may be carrying over aren't necessarily registering or aren't making a difference in some of these metrics.
They're not connecting to it.
Yes, I think that's fair, but they could have. But yeah, I mean, I think that, some of Gen Z are graduated, some of Gen Z are out in the world.
Gen Z.
About 50% of them.
Yeah, that's true.
So they're 42.
Yeah. No, you're good. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is making Finlit relatable and engaging. How do we make it so that these topics that can be traditionally kind of scary, kind of overwhelming, how do we make it make sense for Gen Z? We're going to talk about focusing on technology, using social media and influencers, and personalizing the learning experience. So first, this idea of focusing on technology. Gen Z, we all know this, loves technology. They grew up with the internet. The internet has always been a thing with them. So I think what's important is to talk about this idea of how technology can be tied into our financial literacy. For example, online banking is a huge aspect of it. Apps such as You Need a Budget. All other budgeting apps have just left my brain. But apps like that are the way that Gen Z is relating to their money can help make it make a lot more sense, make it be relevant, and talk about the things that they actually need. Another thing that can help is online tools and simulations. They're going to be on the internet no matter what. These tools that are meeting them where they are or doing the things that they're already used to can be really helpful. Another one, and this ties back to TikTok and some of those things that we were talking about before, are these finfluencers, are these people online. How many of you guys, by a raise of hands, would say that your students are getting a lot of their information from online? I would say most of the room is probably raising their hands. A majority of students, I would say most of the time, are going to get some kind of information online. That could be information about where they should be investing. That could be information about how to become rich. That could be anything like that. And what's really important is to help them understand when that information is going to be helpful and true, and when it's not going to be so helpful.
When you're 300% ROI, if you just give me $1,000,
yes.
Probably not.
Yes. So what can be helpful is to talk to them about these things and recognize, like, hey, you probably are seeing these things online. Let's talk about what you're seeing. Okay, when they said this, what makes you think maybe that's true? What makes you think maybe that's untrue? Because you're not going to be able to address every single thing that they see online. It's just not possible. They're constantly being inundated with it. But you can help give them the skills to be able to research it themselves, to know how to, okay, maybe I shouldn't believe that at first sight. Maybe I need to do some more research. Things like that. And to take advantage of that and to find people that you really like and maybe talk about them online in the same way that they're engaging with these people that they really like and that are meaningful to you. So with that, we're going to have another little discussion. How can you guys, or how do you in your classroom, or how would you like to start encouraging your students to fact check what they're seeing and learning online? And yeah, we'll just break into our little groups again and have another little conversation. Ready to go. Scan through the notes. Yeah, great. Is everything good on your? Yeah, we have the mic right here. Does that work? Okay.
Thank you.
Give him like 1 more minute. Good? Okay.
Thank you.
I know, I like how that works. What is it, the elementary school team? Okay, who wants to share what you guys talked about? Anybody want to be the brave soul? Yeah, go ahead.
I thought it'd be fun to intentionally find something that, like, if they Google it, they're gonna get the wrong answer.
Yes.
So they have to dig in a little bit.
Yeah.
So say, we're gonna have a competition.
Oh, cool.
What's the answer to this, right? And then have them all go. You know already that the first things that they're gonna see are not gonna be correct.
Yeah.
And then, that would take some setup. But
That's a really fun idea. It's especially relevant with all the AI Google stuff. I don't know if you guys heard about that drama where it's just pulling completely wrong information and putting that as the top answer on Google. So I think that's a great way to kind of encourage, no, maybe don't just look at that.
We'll find out this summer.
Yeah.
One question.
Yeah. What else?
Change the next day. Probably.
What else did you guys talk about? Anybody else have insights, thoughts?
Kind of reminds me, I can't remember if it was the SEC or someone else, but there was a big government agency that made a stake investing site. And they did a lot of SEO to make it rise to the top of your Google search results. And they promised this ridiculous ROI. And then when you entered in your information, they sent you an email that was like, hey,
you just fell for this.
You just fell for this thing. And that's not good.
That's
and here's
cool.
the reasons why. These are the red flags that we put right in front of your face. But that kind of thing of can you actually tell?
Yeah.
And testing that knowledge. So
cool. Any other thoughts? One more? Yeah.
This last year when I was teaching my stock market unit, a lot of kids were GameStop.
Yes, that whole thing.
Okay, invest all your money in GameStop. 2 weeks later, they're broke.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, so where did you find your information as to, validate what GameStop's doing? How did GameStop stock rise up? And then I pointed that whole thing out to the whole class as to what was going on in that whole situation. And they're all like, oh.
Very cool.
I just realized that to them, reality is social media.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, what they see on social media, Mr. Good Luck actually wanders around with millions and millions of dollars in the back of his car and just hands it out.
Yeah.
That's all real to these guys.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so find the truth.
Yeah.
And I encourage them when they come to me with something, I say, look and find another resource that says the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Find 2 resources that say the same thing.
And see if those resources are actually trustworthy or if they're just somebody's blog who can say whatever they want. Did I see another hand over here? I thought maybe I did. Yeah.
I was just basically being the same thing, 2 or 3 different sources.
Yeah. Yeah, and make sure you're finding things to kind of corroborate what you're actually talking about. And then the last thing is just personalized learning experience. Talk about things that are actually going to be relevant to them. Obviously, Gen Z are coming into a world right now where inflation is huge and crazy and everything's insanely expensive. It doesn't make sense to talk about finances from this same way of just like, oh yeah, and so with your paycheck, you can go out and buy whatever you want and maybe like save on the side, and hey, eventually you'll be able to buy a house and it won't even be hard. Like, that's not the world that they're living in. So it's important to like relate that to this. Like, hey, you may have to get a second job if that's what you want to do. You may have to do some kind of side hustle on Uber or Uber Eats or whatever, or something like that. Make sure when you're talking about finances, it's relating to the world that they're actually living in.
And we're all living in it too, right? Like, I have a small family, and trying to go to the grocery store every week is really hard. And it's eye-opening. And bringing that in and saying, you know what? Yes, you're right. Buying a house for you is going to be harder than it was for me or for my parents. But we can still get there. Here's how. Yeah. And just validating that experience goes a long way too.
I had this discussion with my kids and my mom the other day.
Oh yeah?
They were talking about, my parents have always lived in the same house.
Mm-hmm.
They bought one house back, I think it was in 1966, and they bought it for $18,000.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
And my kids are like, well, how come you got this? You know, we were just talking about how much they paid for their first homes, and I was like, uh-huh. And they're looking at it now and they're like, why do we have to pay so much?
Yeah. Well, I think that is an interesting discussion to get into. Why have house prices gone up so much? Why has college admission prices gone up so much? Like, let's talk about that. Let's consider that, because these are the concerns that are in their mind. This is the financial reality that they're living in.
Yeah. And also bringing up, like, wages have also gone up. Why does it not seem to feel the same way? Like, to feel doable in the same way? And is it because wages haven't risen as quickly as some of these other prices? Yes, that's why. But, then having those discussions with students. So another way that you can relate to Gen Z is to just focus on what they are most likely to be concerned about. And when it comes to financial literacy, Gen Z, they are usually concerned about debt management, mental health, and financial well-being. Those should be kind of like one bullet point.
Oh yeah, they got broken now.
Yeah. And then investing for the future. So, according to Bankrate, as of 2023, the average Gen Z borrower has an outstanding student loan balance of $24,473. So, this is something that, like, as millennials, and this has been, like, really relevant to our generation, these, like, crazy student loan balances. And for me, I was kind of hopeful, like, oh, well, maybe Gen Z will have it a little bit easier and they won't take out so many student loans, but that's just not the reality. So it's important for students to learn about how student loans are financed and how and when they're paid back. I remember when I was taking out student loans, the only lesson I got was unsubsidized means unhappy. So I was like, I'm never going to take out unsubsidized loans. But I probably took out subsidized loans that I didn't need to, and that interest rate still hit when I graduated. So I wish I had a little bit more knowledge than just unsubsidized equals unhappy, which that's good, but we can do better.
Yeah, we have a game in Bonsai where students go through, they pick the school that they want to go to, and they enter in a bunch of information about okay, where do you think you're going to live? The average cost for that city is this much if you're living in the dorms or if you're living in an apartment. How much is food going to cost? Yada, yada. And a bunch of students get to the end and are just like, oh, I didn't realize it was going to be that much. So this is an issue that's clearly on their mind, especially if you're working with juniors and seniors. So don't be afraid to address it. Don't be afraid to talk about, okay, how can you bring those costs down? What are some things you could get around? Does it make more sense for you to go to an in-state college so you're paying in-state tuition? Things like that.
Or maybe take a gap year, or maybe do some other alternate path to your career. And those kinds of conversations are really relevant to avoid this kind of massive student loan debt, or to borrow responsibly and know what that means and how to pay it back. Also, Gen Z averages about $3,000-ish in credit card debt. And we know that when a child turns 18, they are flooded with ads for credit cards. Credit Karma, I'm a big Intuit fan. I'm not trying to, but once you sign up for Credit Karma, you get so many ads for credit cards, and it seems like a really good deal. I just graduated high school, and I can have access to $2,500 right now. for free, and just like having a little bit of education of what that means and that that's not exactly how it works. And also responsible credit card usage. I know for me, when I was in high school, I had like a lot of never get a credit card, never get a credit card, never get a credit card, and how that isn't always realistic. But responsible use could be really helpful. So that's one Gen Z concern. Another one is mental health and financial well-being. We know that finances are like knotted together with mental health. It is one of the biggest stressors for everyone, but especially Americans. Mental health and financial well-being are really tied together, and Gen Z is especially concerned about mental health. So they care more openly about mental health and mental health issues than previous generations, and they've grown up with more open communication about mental health, largely thanks to, again, social media and destigmatizing some of these like mental health issues. So mental health and financial well-being are, they go hand in hand, and studies show that financial stress, debt, unexpected expenses contribute to anxiety, depression, mental health issues. Also things like autism or ADHD, OCD, those kinds of mental health challenges can impact someone's ability to make responsible financial decisions. And if we can help someone who has those kinds of obstacles learn ways to work with them, that's going to be a better outcome for them. And then finally, a big concern for Gen Z is investing for the future. And we see this so much in that finfluencer space. So much of like finfluencing and social media about financial literacy is about investing, because that's what Gen Z cares about. They are really interested in achieving financial independence and having a strong financial foundation. They are seeing these people in their lives that have invested wisely, different kinds of like big names that we all know and have come out really on top. But financial well-being for this generation isn't about just having money and budgeting money. They want freedom and flexibility. And so they might choose jobs that offer better mental health benefits and like avoiding burnout over like just trying to get as much money as they can. And that's another reason why they're so interested in investing for the future in a way of building up their like financial security that isn't necessarily driven by their income alone.
Awesome. The next thing we're going to talk about, we're going to move through this one pretty quick. Connecting with financial literacy to Gen Z's values. Again, this is going to be a broad generalization. Everybody has different values, but these are trends that we see in Gen Z. And this one goes back to that investing idea, sustainable and ethical investing. ESG investing is sort of a index that a lot of people look at to find things that are ethical in their opinion. So it looks at environmental impact, social impact, governance, and government's impact. And a lot of people will choose to invest in those companies just because they feel good about the people that they're investing in. So for Gen Z, that may be something that like, oh yeah, I really care about the environment. I really care about the ethics of these companies that I'm supporting. This could be an option for something that you can support or that you can point them toward and be like, okay, maybe it isn't just that you have to feel bad about investing in something that goes against your values just because you've heard that that's the only way to make money. You can use something like this index to learn a little bit more about the companies that may fit your values a little bit more. Another thing Gen Z tends to care a lot about, social impact and philanthropy. So that's things like income inequality, economic justice. How can you tie financial literacy into those things and make it make sense for them? Why would economic justice be a problem for certain people? Or excuse me, why would financial literacy be a problem with certain people when it relates to economic justice? Are there people who are being born into a situation that's much harder to come up from? How can you talk about that and be honest about it and engage them in those problems that they already care so much about? And then again, kind of what Nicole already touched on, financial wellness beyond money, responsible spending, mindful consumption, delayed gratification, like these things that are not just like, let's get as much money as we possibly can and then I will be happy and feel better. That's less of a concern for Gen Z, although of course everybody wants to make enough money that they can be satisfied and be happy. But this idea of like, okay, how can you get enough money that it will serve you for the rest of your life? Yeah, let's go through this one.
Yeah, so really quickly, just some ways that you can empower Gen Z with practical skills. So the practical skills that they are kind of looking for and that we're all craving is stuff like budgeting and expense tracking, credit building and responsible borrowing, and investment basics. So when it comes to budgeting and expense tracking, create a realistic budget that tracks income and expenses. And there's different apps and tools you can use for this. Something that is kind of fun to do in a classroom is to like create a budget together and look at apartments in your city and to see what they actually are instead of trying to base it off of national averages. That can go a long way to making it feel realistic and relatable to the student. But then also bringing it back to Bonsai, we have a lot of budgeting tracking games that let a student practice before they get out into the real world. So for example, we have a budgeting game called Life Scenarios, and the student can go in, make some big decisions like their car breaks down. Are they going to fix it or are they going to buy a new one? If they fix it, what happens if the transmission gets shot 2 weeks later and then they're out another, couple $1,000s? And those kinds of like real life scenarios where you think you know the right answer, but life is more complicated than that. And it lets them kind of practice and make mistakes in a classroom before they're making those mistakes out of the classroom. Do we have time? Okay, well, this is an example of life scenarios. The student will get an income, and then they do the double entry budgeting where they have it in their checking they put it in their checking account, and then they budget it into the different categories. And then they just have to go through their life and see if they budgeted correctly and if they have to move things around. And if they didn't put enough into car, they're going to have to take from some other budgeting category. And that kind of practice helps them prepare themselves for like the real world when this is really a lot scarier. Also, there is credit building and responsible borrowing. So how to build and manage credit. Building credit is something that's really important, and it's a big foundation that a lot of high schoolers graduate not knowing a lot about. Understanding different types of debt and strategies to manage and repay debt. That's all really helpful for Gen Z as they're like, as I said before, I mean, the credit card ads, guys, it's unreal. And so many social media, just bring it back to social media, so many influencers will partner with different credit card providers to say like, hey, you should check out this card. And they have some kind of collaboration that's like getting into these students, but it might not actually be the best credit card for them, or they might not need a credit card right now at all. It kind of depends on their situation, and that's the kind of stuff that we can bring into the classroom and help them learn so that when they interact with us on social media, they'll know. And then investment basics. So understanding the value of money is an essential part of financial education. Learning the fundamentals of investing, like asset allocation, diversification, risk tolerance, empowers Gen Z to start building wealth for the long term. We know that a lot of investing apps make investment seem really fun, and it's like a game, and then you're in big trouble. And so being able to come to a student and say, hey, this is the long game here. It's going to be a lot better if you invest in a lot of different things and keep it in there for a long time than if you're trying to play the market. And that's obviously really dangerous.
So,
like your example of GameStop. Yeah.
Yes. With some of these things that we've talked about now, what we want you guys to do is we want you to come up with an activity that you could do for a day in the classroom and relate it to some sort of current event, some sort of big thing that's going on right now. You guys are going to get into your little groups again, however big you want your group to be. And I want this side of the room, you guys are going to make an activity for the day about budgeting. This middle section, you guys are going to do investing. And this section over here, you guys are going to do credit. And I want you to come up with something that relates to something that we've been talking about. You can use TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. You can talk about online games. You can talk about something that's trending. You can talk about Kim Kardashian if you want. But I just want you to brainstorm with each other, like how can we make these an activity for a day that makes sense to Gen Z, and that's maybe something that you hadn't considered before. Ready, go.
Is it just money like the whole giving them a couple scenarios on So it's just kind of like, well, you might trust somebody who's a long platform, or if you know somebody less than.
I was going to bring up if you need a prompt, the Adobe. Yeah, it's fine.
Do it. How do we do it?
Just go around and tell people.
We'll do ours.
Oh, yeah, let's do ours. Why do they do that? Yeah. Yeah.
About like property, intellectual
Talk to them about these things. And then maybe an assignment you could have them do is bring in some of the favorite pictures from a magazine, print some things off, and then they have to like cut them up and pull out the box and have these art and kind of talking about why that's a problem. That doesn't necessarily talk about finances, but talk about how it's impacting your stocks. What do you start thinking there? And then how does this tie into finance? Oh, when are we supposed to be done? We've got about 10 minutes. So we'll give them like 2 more minutes. I'm going to go around and just kind of be like 2 minute warning. Okay. 2 minute warning. 2 minute warning. 2 minute
Yeah, but lots of fun. Yeah, well, but I don't love it. Like a worksheet you go look up on the top and brand. So it was more interactive where you just go
Is there a gin that would relate to the
I wish we did that. It's fine. Let's talk about teach the new recipe. Yeah, there you go. That's retirement.
I know, but I'm just gonna.
I know.
That's funny. That was great.
Okay, can you pull everybody back together to wrap up your activities that you can do? Okay, so we don't want to ask you guys to do anything that we wouldn't do. So while we were standing up here, we also came up with an activity. Has anybody heard about the drama going on with Adobe? So a couple of days ago, Adobe released a new user agreement that you have to agree to use their software, obviously. And kind of hidden within it was this thing that basically said, by using our software, you agree to let us use anything you make on it to train our AI. That came out and people got really, really mad about it. And they were like, how can you just sneak that in there and not tell us, yada, yada, yada. Adobe's stock went. It's having a bad time right now.
So we were thinking about like what kind of...
Google did the same thing, so we can be mad at them too.
Yes. But we were kind of talking about
how can, if your students are hearing about this, how can we capitalize on that and talk about it and make it interesting?
And what kind of discussion points would an event like that have in the classroom? So we talked about, well, AI ethics, which not necessarily financial literacy equivalent, but still really important, something they're thinking about all the time. We can also talk about intellectual property. What is that? Why is this okay legally? Why is it shady, or why isn't it? We can also talk about that stock impact. why did that happen? What does that mean? Does that mean Adobe's not worth anything anymore?
If you had money invested in Adobe before this happened, what's going to happen now? Should you sell
Should
it
you
all
pull
now that it's
everything
going
out?
down?
Yeah.
Should you buy it all now that it's really low?
Buy it low
Mhm.
because they're gonna fix the problem.
Yeah. So these are the kind of discussions that like your students are already hearing about. They're going to be interested in it. And then finally we were like, okay, and then what's the way we can make this kind of fun? We were thinking have everyone either bring in a picture of a celebrity or a painting or whatever that they like. Have everybody cut it up, put it into a box, and then everyone has to grab a handful and make a new picture out of that. And it's kind of going back to this idea that's like, yeah, they're saying they want to be able to use their stuff to make AI and make new images. So let's talk about that, and then let's talk about like, how does that make you feel? If it was a picture that you made, do you feel kind of gross about it? If it was a picture of a celebrity, does that celebrity still look good now that you've had to try to recreate their face?
Or is it totally okay?
Yeah, or do you not have a problem with it? Why is that? Kind of bringing up some of these discussions. What else? Did you guys have any other activities that you guys came up with that you thought would be really good to share with the group? Or everyone came up with really terrible activities. You're all outing your partners if you don't say something. So. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that you could come up with several different types of fake investments, some of them good, some of them bad.
Yeah.
And then present those to the class and find out who would invest in these particular ones and say, okay, you have X amount of dollars to invest, which would you buy and why?
Yeah.
And then explain everything at the end and have a good discussion about it.
Very cool. And would that be like, would some of them be real companies and some of them fake companies?
Possibly, and
okay.
put a Ponzi scheme in it,
Yeah.
put something about crypto in it,
Yes.
just all these different things.
Cool. Very cool. What else? No one's going to bring up Kim Kardashian, which is going to make me really sad. But
Did something happen recently?
no, she's just like the celebrity that came to my head. I
She's still
don't.
relevant?
I don't know. Does Josie care about Kim Kardashian? That's the real question.
Going back to the stock market example, just kind of like a little teaser, is Bonsai actually has a new game coming out this month, next month?
It should be out for the new school year.
Okay, great. About the stock market, where we're going to have those kinds of fake investment opportunities and then like discussions and news articles surrounding these companies and give the student an opportunity.
Yeah, you have to pick the ones you're going to research in, and based off of your research, you have to estimate, okay, do I think that something good is going to happen? Do I think something bad is about to happen, that they're going to release a thing that's going to make a bunch of people mad and their stock's going to go down?
Is this a one-day thing, or do you trump?
You can do it in one day. You could possibly stretch it out to be two, but yeah, it's supposed to be super quick, short introduction.
So if you use the stock market game and that's a big part of your classroom, this would be a good precursor for that, like kind of getting their feet wet with stock market, a crash course, and then you could do the longer multi-week.
Another one that kind of ties into this idea is our retirement game. This is another one. It's in beta right now. It'll be fully out for this school year. But you have to also take this and invest in what you want to, invest in your 401k, invest in your retirement options, and try to make enough to save for the future. So the idea is that you go through a whole lifetime as this guy. You work as a elephant caretaker. And you have to learn about all these different things, your 401k, you have to decide how much you're going to do, how much you're going to save for emergencies, emergency situations may come up, things like that.
Yeah. Any other activities anyone wants to share?
I'll share.
Yeah, go for it.
So for budgeting, stand up.
Yeah, you're a little hidden over
I
there.
am. Perfect. It's exactly what I want. So for budgeting purposes, I have my students go talk to their parents, and they have to create a budget based off what their parents are doing.
Cool.
Most students, I find that their parents don't have a budget, so it's a chance for them to teach them.
Yeah.
But they go through, there's a free document on Google Sheets that they actually have one that they can download, and they can go through and fill it out. And it gives them all categories, they can change the categories. And then I come back to that about 3 weeks later, and they have to go through a spend tracker where they have to track what they spend. And
Very
they go
cool.
back to their parents, and they track exactly what it is. And that Google sheet actually poses everything based on what they budgeted versus what they spent. So kind of as a real world example.
Cool.
And I send this out to the parents to say, hey, this is what you're going to be doing with your kids, so just be prepared.
Yeah.
And then I also put in that email to them and say, this is so your students understand what you're going through to provide for them, so hopefully it brings a little more respect from your students back to you of what you're doing.
Love that.
So, one question though, do your parents have a problem with sharing their
So if they do, I put in there, I say, I've had that before, and I say, if you're uncomfortable sharing your budget, and I tell them my story, I tell the students my story, I don't tell the parents this, but I say, my parents didn't say a word to me about how much they spent. What our house payment was, nothing, so I didn't have any of that information. But I put in that email, I say, if you are uncomfortable, give your students a ballpark, right? If your house payment is $1,500, give them a ballpark between $1,000 and $2,000, and their job, I've already instructed them in the class, take the average of the two numbers. So if you want them to not know exactly, but you're like, oh, I want them to be at 1,000, then give them 500 and 1,500, and they'll do the budget off of that.
Cool. Very nice. Yeah, I pulled this up while you're talking because it reminded me of our Consumer Smarts game. So the whole idea in this game is a kid comes to their parents and they're like, hey, I really want to buy these fancy headphones. Will you please give me like $60 for them? And the parents are like, no. But if you want to try to save up the money for these headphones, you can take over the family budget and you can go do the grocery shopping for this week and go do buy your kid brother new cleats for soccer practice and take him to the swimming pool and take care of the dog.
It's like a fictionalized version, a little bit of what you're saying.
Yeah, and so any money that they save, they're able to put towards their headphones. So the idea is at the end of the game, if you saved enough by sort of being smart about what you're going to buy and researching things carefully, you're able to buy your headphones. I just pulled that up because that reminded me of that. We're running out of time, so we will just kind of cruise through a little bit here at the end. Some additional tips to just kind of keep in mind. Promote a growth mindset. Remember that it's okay for you guys to be learning more. It's okay for them to be learning more. Like, we're all figuring out this weird new economy. The economy's never going to stay stagnant. We're always going to be figuring it out. So just be okay with continuing to learn, encouraging them to be okay with continuing to learn. And this idea of peer-to-peer learning, like, hey, what is Johnny doing over there? What is Samantha doing over there? These are horrible names. But help them get used to talking to each other. And never mind.
Sorry to all the Samanthas and Johnnies.
And then just be authentic and relatable and just talk about, these are issues that I'm having, kind of like Nicole had. I have a family that I have to go support and go to the grocery store, and it's really hard. Like, I'm sure you guys, when you're going to go do these things, it's also really hard. And it's okay to kind of be open about that. Money is a really unique thing because it's something that we all interact with for our entire lives. Like, yes, we also interact with gravity and whatnot, but in a much more much more direct sense, in a much more way where you're like actually
every single day you're having to make a financial decision.
Yeah. Yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed it. We've got a bunch of our products up here. We also brought some samples of our free workbooks. We didn't talk much about Bonsai. We have a bunch of online games. Everything's free. We also have free printed workbooks. We talk about personal finance, college and career prep, and digital citizenship. We have everything from grades 3 through 12 plus. If you have any questions, please feel free to come up and ask us as well. We're running out of time, but we might have time. We don't have any time. If you have any questions, please come up and ask.